Hello and welcome to Unleash Your CRM Secret Weapon. This automotive news power training webinar is brought to you by VinSolutions. We're delighted you're with us today for this presentation. I'm Mary Beth Vanderschaff, Managing Editor at Automotive News. Before I introduce our speaker today, a few navigation tips. First, we encourage you to ask questions at any time. Just type them into the Q&A box on the left side of the webinar window and then hit Submit. I will steer your questions to our speaker toward the end of this session. Also, to enlarge the slides, just grab the frame with your mouse and pull it larger. And to download the slides, click on the folder icon at the bottom of your console. Today's speaker is Mark Vickery. Mark is Senior Director of Performance Management at VinSolutions, where he is charged with implementing a true account management department. Mark brings a strong background in the retail car business with a focus on customer retention and leading and establishing teams. Now, let's hear from Mark.
Well, thank you, Mary Beth and Automotive News. I'm really glad to be here. So I hope that we can spend a little bit of time here together and get something out of this, and I'll certainly do my best to try and do that. So today, we're going to talk about unleashing your CRM secret weapon, and I presume that everybody on the call has a CRM, and we kind of have to have one of those things these days. So I'm hopeful that by the end of today, you'll pick up a couple of things that can help you get more value out of your CRM. So let's just dive right into it. So I would ask you, are any of these statements true about your store? I had a technical glitch there. So you've invested in a new CRM, but aren't seeing any, improvement. You've made this big change, and nothing's gotten better. You're selling the same number of cars, everything else. You feel like you're behind on your tasks, so we all know CRMs fire a lot of tasks, and you're behind on them, and you just can't seem to motivate people to utilize the tool and to complete the processes. Or maybe you're not making the kind of money that you think you deserve, and you just don't know why. And mostly, people just don't seem to use the CRM. I mean, I will tell you, there's a lot of things that get people out of bed in the morning. So for me, it used to be getting out of bed in the morning to go sell somebody a car, Now I get out of bed in the morning hoping I can get people to use the CRM better, right? Because they're going to stay a customer of ours, but they need to use the thing and get some value out of it, and they'll keep being our customer, right? It's not more complicated than that. So I think there's a lot of people, if we had the ability to see hands, your people don't use the CRM as well as they could. How many of you would raise your hands? A lot of you probably. And I think a lot of that has to do with data cleansing, poor data quality. And I went round and round and round with some people here in the office about this particular slide. I don't know where we get this. I mean, we got it from a study. It's not really an automotive study, but poor data quality cost our economy a pile of money. By the way, that was my suggestion, to use the word pile instead of $3.1 trillion. That seems like an enormous amount of money to me, certainly a pile. But bad data quality certainly costs people money, and it's not hard to look far to see it just in your own personal life. I mean, do you get direct mail on things that don't relate to you anymore? Maybe a car you don't own anymore, which is certainly automotive. Maybe it's, it's a lot of things. Maybe you just changed, banks, and you're getting stuff from the old bank, treating you like you're still a customer, and on and on and on. So bad data quality can cost people a lot of money, and I believe it's not a stretch to understand that impacts us also. Because we think it costs your dealership a lot. And we're going to focus a lot on data quality on this kind of conversation today. All right, but think of some of the ways that this costs you and your owner money. First of all, you're paying some amount of money every month to the CRM company. I mean, it's just the cost of the software costs money. If you've got bad data, then it's going to cost you sales for sure. I mean, if you're not emailing the right email address, calling the right phone number, or talking to the right person, how can you possibly get good results? And then maybe most expensive of all is missing out on marketing opportunities. That's a huge sort of benefit that the CRM provides us, and that is the opportunity to market to your database. These are all people in your CRM that have either bought a car from you, serviced a car with you, or maybe raised their hand and considered the possibility of doing one of those things with you. Right? So they're yours, because you've already done business with them, or they at least thought enough of you and where you are and the brands you represent and so on to consider doing business with you, right? So we've got an opportunity to market to all those people. If the data is flawed, then that opportunity is diminished quite a bit, okay? So the key, I think, to getting the most out of your CRM, to unleashing your secret weapon, is really centered on utilization. And what does utilization mean? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to define CRM utilization. But I think it starts with looking at your CRM as a primary or vital or profound piece of reaching your goals, and that is best done when you can create, develop, maintain, establish a CRM culture. And I really think that is kind of the whole thing. It's 2000, almost 19 now. And when I started in the automobile business, there were no computers, there was no internet, there was no CRM, okay? And we managed to get along just fine. And some of you old-timers like me would probably wish you could go back to a time when there is no software and internet and all those things, okay? But it's not bad, right? It ain't going anywhere. So we've got to create a CRM culture. So what does CRM culture mean? Well, I think it means a lot of things. So first and foremost, if it didn't happen in the CRM, then it did not happen. That is, I think, if you're a leader on this call, if you're a manager, if you manage people, then this is on you. You've got to create that culture whereby if it's not in the CRM, then it just simply did not happen, and that's a big deal, I called the customer and they told me X, Y, and Z. Well, no, you didn't, because, it's not in the CRM. So I know you didn't call them, because if you did, of course, it would be in the CRM, right? And I think you've got to have that attitude with all people all the time. It's the only way that we can get the most out of the data that's in the CRM. And then so once we have that culture, or at least some semblance of that culture, then you've got to make sure that your processes are what you believe, and frankly what everybody on the team believes, puts you in the best possible place to win the appointment, to win the service drive RO, to win a sales appointment, to win. That's what a CRM does two things, in my mind. It's a data warehouse, and we're going to talk a lot about data, okay? excuse me, and it's also a process engine. All of those tasks that may or may not being completed are firing from some kind of a process, a new internet lead process, an unsold follow-up process, a sold customer process, a missed appointment process, a set appointment process, and take a deep breath, right? They're all processes. That's all they are, right? And if y'all don't believe in those processes and you're not passionate about those processes, well, then who's going to be, right? So if you're not familiar with the processes and you don't know them by heart, well, then shame on you. Go get familiar with them. Sit down with the decision makers, and let's make sure that we believe our processes are our processes, all right? And then, of course, you've got to learn how to capture and monitor and utilize the data. In short, you've got to learn how to use the tool, right? And you might have to role play and work on capturing data, period. For sure, you've got to inspect what you expect, right? And then you've got to put plans into place on how to utilize that data, right? And that's where, your CRM company can come in handy to help you execute on utilizing all of the data that you have. Because if it's just sitting there, in the cloud, it ain't doing you any good, right? And then, of course, you need to leverage your team to execute properly. Holding people accountable is certainly something we get. I should say the ability to hold people accountable is something that we get out of a CRM, no doubt about it. Now, look, if we're nothing other than creating Big Brother, then maybe it's, it becomes this uncomfortable thing that maybe has the opposite effect. I always tell people, don't use the CRM as a weapon. But we really do need to leverage the team. I mean, we're going to do things here at ABC Motors. We're going to do this with every customer, every time, every day, right? So we need to leverage your team to execute on your strategy. Because remember, a couple points ago, we created and fine-tuned our processes. So it sounds like a lot, right? I mean, it's really not so much. Because I think if we succeed at creating the CRM culture that I'm trying to talk about, well, then it just becomes that's who we are. Okay, so if we're successful in creating a CRM culture, if we're successful in getting everybody rowing in the same direction, we have an opportunity to increase productivity, which is critical today, increase efficiency, which is critical today. Ask any dealer principal if efficiency is important to him or her making a good return on investment nowadays. I mean, I can remember a time when every manager had their own porter. We had a lunch porter. We had we had staff coming out the wazoo. Well, we don't anymore because we have to operate more efficiently. So getting the CRM dialed in is an opportunity to increase efficiency, and of course, success with that helps us to increase profitability. Okay, so we're going to talk about three things now that I hope will kind of bring it home a little bit. One is choose your champions. And you can call champions whatever you want, guru, czar, we call them around here Vin champions. I don't care what you call them, but it's somebody, and we're going to talk about that somebody here in the first little bit here. But somebody has to be the kind of owner of the CRM in the store. And we'll talk about what that person looks like, I think. But I really, really think that's important, that somebody be the champion of the CRM. And then we're going to talk about training. I don't know what everybody's onboarding process probably looks a little bit different, okay? But you know what's not uncommon is we hire a salesperson and we put them through pretty rigorous, brand training. They're watching all of the OEM videos. They're learning the product knowledge inside and out. A lot of stores require, walk around, role playing and things of that nature. And I know groups that they won't even let customers talk to a customer until they demonstrate that they've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, learning the product and learning whatever their sales, road to the sale looks like, et cetera. And yet, those same buttoned-up groups will take that new hire salesperson, stick them with a current salesperson that's maybe been there, 4 months, and says, show them how to use the CRM. So here's how you log in. These are the buttons you click. This is where the leads are. Good luck, right? And that's the extent of the training. We're going to talk about, how important it is to train, in an effective way. And then, of course, capturing and updating data. How are we doing so far? Nobody can respond. So I'm going to assume everyone said, we're doing great, Mark. Thanks for asking. So choosing your champion. I think, you think of this, there's a lot of roles that the champion fulfills, okay? But we're going to talk about, and by the way, I'll bet you there's a lot of people on this call that would say, well, what do you mean, Mark? I'm the champion here at this store, and I'll bet you are. That's great. So the CRM is going to be, a lot of different hats. One, I think, is going to, know the tool probably better than anybody else. So when there's a question, I can get a right now answer from my champion. I don't have to go to the CRM company. I don't have to, call or email. I got, somebody right there. I'm going to go ask them, okay? And it's an opportunity to serve as a training, a part of the training process for new hires and ongoing training and that sort of thing. Because I think everybody knows the CRM itself does not really do anything, okay, all by itself, right? You guys still have to sell the car. The CRM, at least VinSolutions doesn't. Maybe the other company CRMs does. Ours, you guys still got to sell the car, okay? So just signing up for CRM, all by itself, certainly doesn't do anything, all right? You've got to get complete buy-in across the whole store, and that's where I think you need champions. And by the way, your champions should be thought of as this internal champion guru, but then also your CRM provider is a champion for your store and a resource for your store also. So your internal champion is that go-to person to answer all the questions. I forgot how to do this. I need to delete a user. I want to transfer these prospects, from this person that just left to this other salesperson or whatever, right? I forgot how to send a campaign email. Show me how, right? Just everyday questions, right? And then I think the CRM champion is also the internal person, and maybe it is a manager, okay? Maybe it is, I see it all over the map, right? But maybe it is a manager, but it's somebody working with management and the sales teams to make sure that the tool is set up the way we want it to, right? That if the processes need to be changed, your CRM champion can help, execute on that, and maybe even to help identify the need to change up things in the first place, right? And then I think the internal champion is also going to be a key role in training new hires. I see groups that will put somebody through a multiple day training deal on new hires on just CRM. I see people that do training like every Thursday morning from 9 until noon, and so everybody that got hired since last Thursday morning is coming to that training, right? And some groups that make everybody go through CRM training once a year, no matter how long they've been there, right? Because things atrophy and people forget, how certain things work. So I think those are kind of the key things that the internal champion does. So the CRM vendor champion is an important part of that process also. So around here, we call them performance managers, okay? And that's the team I manage, right? So, but whoever the account manager is for your CRM, I think you should expect them to work alongside your internal champion and your management team, right, to ensure that you guys are getting the maximum value out of the CRM. So a big part of what I think the CRM vendor champion, or what we call a performance manager, does is they help to hold you accountable, right? You want, in my mind, you want the CRM company to come in and tell you what you're doing wrong, okay? They're not just a customer support person or a training person. If they are, you're not getting the most out of them, I don't think. You want them coming in and telling you, hey, Joe, what the heck are you doing, man? We talked about this. You told me you were going to start confirming appointments. You're not confirming appointments. Let's go, or whatever, right? But then also to serve as kind of a sounding board, people that these are people that talk about CRM activity all day, every day, and nothing else, by the way. You guys, the last I checked, are wearing a bunch of different hats all the time, right? So they're going to also work alongside you to help you identify where the low-hanging fruit is and where, you may need to focus some attention. All right, so I would challenge you now to just write down some names of your CRM vendor champions and 3 people in your dealership who could be your internal CRM champion. I mean, do you know who your resource is with the CRM company? If you don't, find out. And if you don't have somebody that owns that at the store or the group, let's write down some names of people that, could fill that role. Okay, training to win. So it's not enough, I don't think, with training. And when you think about CRM training, it's not enough to just train when somebody's brand new. I mean, on some level, showing people how to log in and how to complete a task and how to schedule a task and how to just use the silly tool is great. But to me, training in the CRM is an ongoing deal, okay? It's something we have to do all the time. And believe me, we see it here on our end. If we could spend, an hour a week with somebody and get to a great, high level of usage, right? If we ignore them for a couple, 3 months, all those things we built up starts to atrophy. So here's a quote from Henry Ford. The only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them and having them stay. I love that quote, and I think it really defines how important it is. So the key, I think, to CRM utilization is you got to have, it's a very top-down driven deal, a management sort of centered thing that is CRM. Because if you're going to have a CRM culture and we're counting on the salespeople to establish that themselves, I mean, that doesn't feel realistic to me, right? So I've got to get buy-in from upper management, right? And so if you're the CRM champion, you've got to motivate and coach up the general manager, the owner, to be involved in the process. If you're doing formal CRM training, well, get the GM to come in and spend, just 5 minutes talking about how important he or she thinks this training is, if they want to work here at ABC Motors, But get buy-in from upper management, because if it doesn't come from there, expecting it to manifest itself on its own, I don't think is realistic. So onboarding is critical. Boy, I can just tell you here at VinSolutions, some of the lessons that we've learned with onboarding new performance managers is I mean, you look at what we do today when we hire performance managers compared to 5 or 6 years ago, frankly, it's night and day, okay? And I would suggest to you that that's even more important, or at least equally as important in the car dealership than it is here, okay? What we do with these folks when they're brand new in our store is just has a profound impact on how they integrate into our processes. And so asking them to understand the tools, and guess what? It's probably not just VinSolutions, is it? I've probably got to make sure that I expose them to and help them to understand the website, and what's important to us on the website, and how we price cars, and it goes on and on and on. But how we onboard them, and I'm simply making the argument on how important focusing on the CRM when they onboard is to the whole deal. Okay. And recurring training is important. If I just train somebody when I hire them and then that's it, that doesn't give me any lift as the technology changes. I mean, I don't know about everybody else's CRM, but our CRM changes all the time. We make improvements to the tool like literally every month. And somebody might be on the phone listening, going, and they're a VinSolutions go, what do you mean? You don't improve it every month. Well, we try to. And it changes all the time. There's something new all the time. So you've got to make sure that you keep the evolution of your CRM tool in front of your people, right? And the marketplace changes, right? Anybody that's as old as I am, if I ask the question, do the way customers shop for and buy cars, is it the same today as it was 15 years ago or 20 years ago? I mean, there are zero people that'll go, oh, Mark, it's exactly the same. Of course it's not, okay? And plus, people just forget, I mean, CRM tools do lots of things. They process leads. They might be the desking tool to run numbers. They might they serve as a marketing arm. They do lots and lots of things, okay? So it's easy for us here at a CRM company. That's all we do is the CRM, right? But people forget. If they're not focused on using that particular part of the tool all the time, they'll forget, and they need to be reminded, okay? So now here's another little piece of in-call homework for you. Write down 3 things where you feel like you need training to be executed. Okay. Now these may be 3 things that you can go do right now. This afternoon, you can start executing on that, or maybe you need to get your CRM company involved to help you, map out a plan on how to best, shore up the training in those areas. Either way, write down some areas where you've got some opportunity. Okay. 3rd bullet point. So that means we had 3, remember? So this is the 3rd one. That means we're getting close to the end. That's good news, right? So capturing and updating data. I mean, I talked about this a minute ago. If it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen, okay, period. You've got to establish that culture. You got to. And you've all heard garbage in, garbage out. Well, if we don't have good data in the CRM, how in the world can we be expected to use that data for anything good? I mean, we can't, right? Everybody knows that. So we talked, I think, about this on an earlier slide, but if we've got inaccurate data or we don't have data at all, then guess what? We're missing sales opportunities. We're not targeting marketing campaigns to the right people on the right cars, okay? And we lose working time. I mean, if you've got a BDC and you've got a bunch of crummy phone numbers and they spend all their time calling those crummy phone numbers, well, guess what? That's all times they could have spent better calling people where I've got good phone numbers, and on and on and on, right? In fact, I would tell you that I think there's a couple of reasons why people don't tend to complete tasks. Sometimes, and I think this fits into the training umbrella, sometimes it is they just don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. It's like, okay, the CRM is telling me to make a phone call to this person. I just talked to them 4 days ago. I don't know what I'm going to say to them, okay? So I need to train on and possibly word track and load their lips on what to say, how to leave a message, and that sort of thing, okay? But I also think one of those reasons is they don't believe it's worth their time. If I've got a bunch of bad data in the CRM, guess what? It's probably not worth their time, and they know it. So they quit completing tasks, and guess what? They just don't quit completing tasks on the ones with bad data. They quit completing all tasks, and including the ones where I've got good data, and a phone call is all I need to set an appointment. By the way, if any of you can have empathy for me right now, go when we're done and get on a phone and look in a wall and start talking, and nobody is responding or nodding their head up and down. That's how it feels when you do these things. So I'm presuming right now that hilarious comment has all of you laughing out loud. Maybe not. So, okay, data capture is key, really, at all times, okay? There's never a right time to capture data, okay? Certainly in the sales process. And by the way, I travel a lot with my job. I stay in Marriott hotels. You can't imagine how many times I check in at the hotel and they ask me, is your email address still, is your best phone number still, do you still live at blank, they're constantly confirming that the data that they have on me is the right data, okay? So it's never a wrong time to do it, and certainly in the sales process. I mean, we coach people all the time. If I start talking to a brand new internet lead customer, I'm going to ask them, hey, this is the email address we have for you. Is that the one that you prefer? Because they might have given me a Hotmail address on the lead form they filled out. When now that they trust me and they want to talk to me, they'll give me their work email that they check more frequently. the customer is going to have life changes. They're going to get married. They're going to, move. They're going to do lots of things, right? They get a new job, so now they've got a new phone, maybe. So the data changes all the time. Their desire to do business with you may not change, but their life has changed in such a way that they've got different contact information. And how about when they service their car? If I've got the most loyal customer on earth, well, maybe on earth is a little aggressive, but let's say somebody buys a car every 3 years from me. Right? That's a pretty loyal customer. Well, they probably service their car, at least, let's call it 4 times a year. So they're going to they're going to come in for service 12 times for every 1 time they buy a car. Let's just use that as a made-up number. Well, that's 12 opportunities that I have to confirm that their data is accurate in the CRM. Okay, so make a data capture plan. Make a data capture plan. I think you've got to make sure that your settings are set up correctly, so that you're getting the right data in from the lead form, and all that kind of jazz, right? You've got to stress data capture plan into your training plan. Incorporate that into. That's got to be a real focus, because look, I can have all of the CRM processes set up, at the very best processes on earth. If I'm not getting data and cleansing the data and updating the data, and by the way, there's probably steps that you need to take with any CRM to make sure that the data that's coming in from the DMS matches up to the CRM on sold cars and duplicate leads that need to be, merged, things of that nature. Those are all steps that have to do with having clean data, okay? And that's a big part, I think, of your ongoing training process. And then, I think the thing I'm most passionate about is you've got to have accountability. If you're only capturing email addresses on X% and that's not up to your standard, well, you've got to hold people accountable to that. That's just effort. Okay. So, same process as before. Write down, a couple, 3 things where you can improve data capture, right now. Maybe it's a process on the service drive check-in. Maybe it's internet lead management part of the process when I establish contact with the customer. Maybe it's something I do on the show floor as part of my road to the sale, right? Come up with a couple things where you can incorporate data capture, in a right now way so you can capture better data. Okay, so key takeaways. That's easy for me to say, right? But I think the key takeaways are, getting a return on your investment, managing your tasks better, so you can achieve better profitability. Okay, so I think we're kind of at the end of the material. There's a ton of questions on here. And then I'm going to try and answer to the best of my ability these questions. So, Mary Beth, do you want to start firing some of these off?
I do, Mark. Thank you very much for that great information. Here's your first question. Can the internal CRM champion be a sales rep, or does it have to be an IT or marketing person?
Boy, that's a great question. I don't think it matters. I think it needs to be somebody first that's passionate about the CRM. I tend to think it should be somebody that has some level of muscle. I mean, somebody that has the respect of the users, I think is important. I mean, but it could I've seen many cases where it's a salesperson, they just love the dang CRM, and provided that they've got a place to go for muscle, then I think it could be a salesperson. I do not think it needs to be an IT person at all. I mean, I think it could be an internet salesperson, a BDC person. Somebody just needs to own, are we doing it? If not, why not?
When dealing with difficult, older-minded salespeople who have been used to doing things their own way for decades, what few points would you suggest to get them to buy in when they see a CRM as just more work?
Boy, that's a really good question, and not an uncommon question. I've got this guy that's been here for 30 years selling cars. He sells 25 cars every month, and he refuses to use the computer. I will tell you the only way I know how to tell you. I mean, I'm 52 years old myself. We didn't have computers until well into my grown-up years, okay? But it's a way of life, man. I mean, you can't come to work at VinSolutions or even anywhere at Cox Automotive and not use a computer, okay? It's just the way it is. And I'm sorry that somebody invented the computer. And I'm sorry that there's an internet, but there is, and you've got to adapt, man. Every single industry on the planet is adapting. Why do we have to be any different? And think about it like this, is it free to get an email lead from a customer? Is that free? Well, the answer is no. It's definitely not free. Is it free when the phone rings, a customer calls in on the phone? Heck no, that's not free. Is it free when they show up on the lot? Goodness no. It's the opposite of free. So if I'm not going to enter those people into my CRM, the tool that I have to manage all my customers, then I'm just wasting money. I'm just getting literally wasting money. And if I use the tool, and people advertise differently, when's the last time you bought a newspaper? I mean, I'm a newspaper guy, and I haven't taken the newspaper at home for 8 years, okay? People advertise differently, so we've got to capture those people and get them into the CRM with good data, or it's just we're just wasting money. So it's not easy. But it's just because they've been there a while doesn't mean they get a pass, in my opinion.
What are the most important pieces of customer data to collect? So
the obvious one, and the one we focused on the most over time, is email address. And it's so easy to get an email address now. We're stupid not to get it. It's also real easy to use an email address, and very, very inexpensive, almost free to use an email address. But I think, and by the way, I'm assuming that we can go with the idea that name is an important piece of data to collect. Let's assume we're getting the name, right? The other thing, though, that is critical important these days is cell phone number. We've got to get cell phone numbers because first of all, that's the only number they use, okay? And second of all, without a cell phone number, I can't text them, and so I've got to get both of those numbers. And that's, to me, that's a part of the training. Can I get your phone number, Mary Beth? Okay, great, thank you. Is that your cell? Oh no. Well, what's your cell phone number? We've got to capture that number.
How can I motivate my employees to always use the CRM?
Well, boy, you shouldn't ask me that question, Mary Beth. Because I'm too old to answer it in the direct way that I want to answer it. But I mean, one way is if they want to work here, they have to, right? It's not a request. It's not a suggestion. You know, around here at ABC Motors, we use our CRM. You know, to me, that's motivation enough. But the kinder, gentler Mark would say, I think it's very easy to demonstrate the value in correct CRM utilization. You know, can I show a salesperson that's achieving better results, that's a really good user of the CRM, as a sort of litmus test on why all this is worthwhile? That's usually pretty easy to achieve. And, you know, if I tell you, Mary Beth, you know, is Caroline or Steve smarter than you? Do they work harder than you? No, they don't. It's because they use the CRM better. That's why they're achieving better results.
How often should I be doing CRM training?
Boy, I'm kind of a big advocate for daily training in a store. But is that, you know, just absolutely necessary on the CRM? Probably not. You know, I think if we can assume that we're doing adequate and thorough training on the front end, meaning when they're hired, then I think you ought to be able to very easily incorporate some kind of CRM training at least monthly into your sort of training regimen. If we have daily training, then maybe it's a couple of times a month where I do something focused just on CRM. If I only do training on Saturday mornings, you know, maybe one Saturday a month, I focus that Saturday morning training on CRM.
Companies have great plans for onboarding and continuous training that falls through the cracks during the year. Is there a plan that you are familiar with that helps ensure continuous improvement even in busy times?
I missed your first sentence.
Companies have great plans for onboarding and continuous training that falls through the cracks during the year. How do you prevent it from just becoming one of those?
Okay, I think that's there's no excuse for that in my mind. I mean, look, I can only tell you what I'm doing today. I've been at VinSolutions almost 6 years now. You know, we hire new people. We don't let them anywhere near a customer until they've been through around here it's a couple of month process. So that's a couple of months. We got to pay them before we get any value out of them. Now, I don't got to do that in a retail store, but there is no, your customers pay the price when your staff is not trained properly. They pay the price. You know, and by the way, you're paying the price too because you're not selling the number of cars and making people happy the way you deserve. So you pay the price too. But the worst thing is your customers are getting a rotten experience maybe when your staff is not trained properly. So to me, that's just that becomes a cultural thing, that this is just who we are. I've got to be willing, and that might mean ensuring that ownership and leadership. That's why a big part of what we talked about earlier is you've got to have your leadership team, your management team in the canoe with you, and as long as they get it that this training has to happen, I don't care how busy we are, I don't care how shorthanded we are, because if I release untrained people to my customers, I'm darn sure not going to get the results I deserve.
How much prospective customer or new customer data do you think is not being entered in by dealer personnel?
Boy, I mean, all over the map is a cop-out answer, okay? But I went and did a presentation to a group of general managers about a week and a half ago, and we ran all of that data for all of their stores. There was like 30 stores, you know, were in this readout. They were capturing on walk-in customers. They were capturing right around 50% of them with email addresses. So that means about half of them, they were not capturing email addresses. On walk-in customers, they were getting, I don't know, like 65% of phone numbers. Now, I don't know how many of those were cell phone numbers, but the numbers to me ought to be, I mean, you're not going to ever be 100%, but if we're not capturing, 75, 80% email addresses and a similar number of cell phone numbers, I just don't think we're trying hard enough. That's what I think.
What CRM training resources are available for me to use in my dealership?
So, of course, I'm mostly familiar, and maybe you could say only familiar with VinSolutions and what we do. So, but I think this is fairly common, certainly not something invented by us, is there's all kinds of online opportunities and videos that new hires, and by the way, that's a big part of a lot of stores' onboarding process is, okay, the first thing you're going to do is watch all the CRM videos, and then we're going to do some face-to-face training. So there's always some kind, usually at least, some kind of online training resource to get somebody trained on the basic buttonology. Right, and then outside of that, are there webinars like this that are, maybe more interactive type webinars where, you can get online with, in our case, a performance manager and walk through best practices and things of that nature should be available also. And not to mention, I think that if I'm going to be in the car business for a living, well, there's things like we're doing right now available all the time, and a whole bunch of people took time out of their day-to-day to try and learn something, okay? And I hope you got like one thing out of it, right? I'm not arrogant enough to think you got like two or three things out of it, but if you got one thing, then you just made yourself a little bit better. And there's a lot of blogs out there and a lot of really smart people that are sharing, what they think is important. And I think to be a student of your industry is a big part of being successful nowadays.
Well, that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thanks to today's audience for the questions. If you asked a question that we didn't get a chance to answer, VinSolutions will follow up by email. If you learned something from this session, please tell your peers about it. The recording will be available in about an hour. You'll find it at autonews.com/powertraining. When the webinar ends, a survey will pop up on your screen. Your feedback helps us create future webinars that are even more beneficial to you. Thanks again to Mark and VinSolutions for bringing us this presentation, and to you for joining us. On behalf of everyone at Automotive News, have a great rest of your day.